Hello everyone, in this video, let's take a brief review for the second exam or the final exam of our class. The time we set up is on May 7th, Tuesday of the final week. I gave a 12 hours window, so from noon to midnight, basically. The test probably you need 90 minutes around, but I will give 2 hours. Once you start, you will have 2 hours to finish the test before, before the time is up. So make sure you do have a 2 hour window before the midnight, so you have adequate time to finish. And also make sure you have a stable internet connection during the testing period. And the test will be released in Blackboard by the time we have here, so not on Connect. The study materials is really similar to the midterm. So we have the ebook readings. I know you did all of the smart book, right? So interactive reading practice. I still recommend you, if you have time, reread the chapters, especially the important concepts or examples. You need some time to refresh the memories and get deeper understanding. And then the homework, most of the homework questions are multiple choice questions to practice and enhance our understanding on the systems, the tools, and it's kind of practice or check up for our understanding of the readings and the materials. And then the lab assignments, because our class, as we mentioned in the beginning, is really hands-on practice on many of the technology tools we used in accounting and business system. So like we started from the data analytics using the Excels, using the pivot tables, and then we started on the Microsoft Access to practice the relational database. Then along the way, we started on the SAP from the different modules. So the questions from the lab assignments is not really memorizing or, just, replicating the answers. Is really what you have learned, as I send out in the announcements. So the purpose of the lab assignments is not to let you just finish. Okay, I follow her demos. I finish the access the database, the queries, or the SAP. But I really want you to connect what we are learning from this class from your other accounting courses. So you will be able to understand how the accounting system is implemented in the real world, rather than when I go to the work, I still rely upon like a paper or pencil or a homework system so I can pick up my job. Okay, that's not going to happen. So we are building this bridge for you and making this transaction become much easier when you get interviews or even like go to the actual working place. So, this is the most important. So what I can connect, okay, what I learned from the relational database. So when I go to the work, can I understand or imagine the database behind our accounting system, like all of our ledger, financial accounts, the assets, then the departments, customers, vendors, and how these databases are linked to each other based upon their logical relationships, and how I extract the data, right? Make data queries or help the managers or other users in the system to extract information for decision making or prepare reports. So this I'm not really saying for one assignment is overall. So I really hope you dig more than the practice or the lab we completed. Okay, the rationale, the purpose, and how this helped me to understand and pick up a real job. So that's the real purpose of the lab assignments. And I will give you some more exam practice in Connect. Okay, so it can be some maybe repetitive question from your homeworks, or I intentionally will give you some essays, like think about like problems so you can think about it more rather than just answer a multiple choice or fill a blank. So the problem thinking, those type of questions. And since this is the final exam, so it's not a complete comprehensive. So I know some of you worried about this material scope. So I can tell you most of the questions will come up from the materials we learned after midterm. So that means chapter 1 to 5, you don't really need to, I think, put some special time, right, for like additional reading or more studies. I hope you still return something because there's really nothing you need to memorize, but again, understanding. So the most of the contents of the test will focus on chapter 6 and beyond. So chapter 6, the relational database with the Microsoft Access practice with the introduction of the enterprise system. Then chapter 8 with SAP, the procurement. Chapter 7 with SAP, the sales process. And then the SAP financial module, I didn't list here. Probably I can add after I go over, because that's pretty much hands-on practice, so we can understand how a financial accounting cycle can be captured and reported in the actual ERP system. So those are kind of accounting transactions, right? Remember, we simulate receiving invoices from a rental company, confirm the invoice, and then make the payments. But in the real business is not a journal entry or a few journal entry we write on the paper. We learned how accounting is integrated with other business functions, vendor management, invoice management. So we learned how to create master data in the SAP system. A master data in SAP is like a table we used in Access. But in SAP, you don't really access to the table, right? Like the rows or columns directly. We understand what are required for, remember, the vendor information. We need the address, we need the name, we have general data, we have company code data, which accounts payable I'm going to use for this vendor, right? So the actual data, like the columns required for a vendor or other tables, are much more complicated in SAP than a simple Access table. I think you will agree with me, right? So, but anyway, so I think it's a nice transition from the Access to SAP, because Access we really focus on the data parts only, but SAP give you a overall idea for the whole system, because the system has much more things than data only. We need to have the processes, because the process help us capture all of the data, and we have the system to process the data, right? So we capture the data, input into the system, we process the data and send the data to different places, like the accounting data, financial data goes to the ledger accounts. Then customer data, vendor accounts, like vendor data, they will update our vendor tables, customer tables, and the shipment data, delivery data, right? So sales orders, purchase orders. So you see in the real, even a small business, the real data database is very much complex. But again, what we are learning here give us the initial key so we can get into this world and explore more in the future. So when you make like so the SAP capture the transaction, enter the data, process the data, and then when you generate like the financial statements, that's a query. So that's something like the query we did in the access. So you can request generate journal entries, or I want to find out the balances for different accounts, or even I want to generate the full balance sheet and income statements. So that's like the queries or reports we used in the access system. So I'm kind of like blending all of the things together. Okay, so we are moving from the access to SAP. So we have 2 chapters on SAP and plus the financial accounting module. And finally, so we skip. Okay, we skip. We don't have time to cover all of the remaining stuff. Even I like them a lot, but I pick up chapter 11, which is a required.
Yeah. That's it. I ain't got but 2 left. How much Devin got?
So chapter 11 is a internal control and corporate governance, and kind of you can see the concept. We already experienced a different type of controls when we learned the Access SAP during the lab practices. For example, we remember in Access, when we define the columns, right, like the data columns, we define the data type, right? Some of the data we wanted to be numeric, some data we want to be currency, and some data need to be in text format. And some data we even define the numeric, like the digits, like 6 numeric digits, even the decimal points. So that's all kind of the controls, validation rules. We don't want the value become negative, right? For some of the values, like revenues, revenues couldn't be negative. So how I can prevent people enter a negative value into a column not supposed to be, then you can define, require that value larger or equal to 0, right? So that's preventive controls. And then you have like detective controls and corrective controls. So we'll talk about more when we talk about chapter 11 in more details later. But what I'm saying here is even you are seeing different chapters, right? 4 or 5 chapters with the financial module, but internally, I want you to see the connections to each other. Remember, the title of our class is system or system. Even we have this topic and we have that topic, but collectively, we want to give you an idea the accounting information system and how it's connected or linked to the overall business system. And all we are learning the system from different perspectives. So we can understand better. We mostly work from a financial perspective, but later you understand, right, the other business functions and how they are playing a role. Uh, Affecting our financial accounting system and even the managerial accounting system, like the purchasing transactions, sales transactions, and those financial data get into the accounting system with the operational functions rather than accounting, we enter the data. So we have purchasing people, sales people, or HR people. They all can play a role to help us enter data into the accounting system. So that's kind of an overall like review. Then if you go looking backwards, right? So trying to pick up all the way from chapter 1, the materials before the midterm. And we talk about it's kind of like after you generate the reports and the data, how we can use the data to help the managers analyze the business system, right? So analyze the data and provide useful information in the right visualizations to facilitate decision making. So I know we can talk a lot, we get covered. There's so much stuff I want to stuff into this course so I can prepare you much better. Okay, but I think gradually if you have opportunity to take accounting 445, I taught that class one time is kind of advanced, or they call contemporary accounting topics. I think you get more ideas on the data analytics and the emerging technology ideas from that course. And I also hope you can expand your system perspective when you take even maybe the governmental accounting courses or auditing course is a place to learn technology. Okay, it's like another good place to learn more technology stuff, system stuff, okay, related to the assurance and auditing job. But anyway, so that's kind of a also overview for our class. Now let's get on to some details of the 4 or 5 chapters. For chapter 6, this is a very important, okay, not only for accounting, like for our class, is overall business information system course. So relational database, not only for accounting data, is kind of for your operational data and other business data. So why we prefer to use relational database rather than hierarchical or network database? We probably introduced something in chapter 5, or if you need review why is the relational database is more advanced and adopt more popularly than the other two in the current days. So relational database means we have like different names. You can call entities, right? Or you can call objects, data objects, or to more straightforward, so we can visualize tables, right? So each table represents an entity in your database. And what the entity means? Entity means your special data interest, right? So for this data interest, for example, my cash account is a special data interest. I couldn't mix my cash account with fixed assets or accounts receivables because they represent different type of assets. So in accounting, we normally use the remodeling. You probably read it in the textbook. REA models, resources, agents, and REA and resources, events, and agents. Yeah, so like the REA model help accounting people to identify the data needs or the tables we need to put into our system. Okay, like what all of the resources we have, all of the assets are our resource entity or tables. And then the events not normally related to your business transaction data, like the sales orders, purchase requisitions, and info record, like we process them. Oh, those are the events data type, events tables. And once you finish your financial accounting module or procurement, you understand this much better, right? So like for after we finish, even you input a journal entry, you got a document number. That's a transaction data, event data. Okay, each of the transaction, you have a event data. Then we have all of the agents. Agents are the peoples or departments or the functions involved in all of the business functions. We have external entities like customers or vendors. And then you have your internal entities, employees, and then departments, right? So we have accounts payables, receivables, purchasing. They are all entities. So entity doesn't always mean people. Okay, be careful. It can be a function or business unit. So REA, okay, let me put it here. So that's a special modeling. So I hope that can be something like, for example, if you are preparing a interview question, right, related to systems. So REA model, resource, events, and agents. Okay, those are the angles or perspective help us to identify all of the table or data needs. And then these tables or entities can be linked together, right? And that's by like later, okay, by the linkings. But before we talk about the key things, like the table structure, I think this one we can pretty much understand because each table is really like a worksheet we use in Excel, right? So in the Excel, we have the rows and columns. Each row should be unique. You have a formal database like customer record or vendors or cash transactions. Each row should represent a unique record. Okay, we cannot have redundant data. So the rows we call records, and the columns normally are the data attributes or the fields. The columns you call like the name, the ID, and address, and then the numerical values or currencies, right? So those are the attributes and fields. In SAP, as I just mentioned, you can see for each table how many different data fields they may require. Remember the material data we used in the procurement. They have more than 20 different views to define a real material. Like we have the data required from the purchasing perspective, from the accounting functions, from the sales functions. Okay, you may have 20 more different views, so we can define all of the required or optional attributes for one type of master data. For material like inventory, we have material inventory, we have finished good, we have semi-finished goods. They all have different requirements. So that's the real. Even the customer or vendors, right? So like remember I warned you, the vendor master data and the material master data are the kind of the hard part, the starting the steps. Okay, you need to be very careful. Do not miss a view and do not miss a inputs, because even you missed one input, you really got the trouble later when you try to use that master data, like the different data for the vendors. Like, oh, which accounts payable I'm going to use. If you miss that accounts payable account, when you try to confirm the invoice from that vendor, you couldn't do that because the system don't know which accounts payable it needed to call to put a payable for that vendor account. Okay, they have a like a breaking between the vendor and our accounts payables. So very, very I think designed. Okay, like so you can see the beauty of all of these, the system. So the rows and the columns, and so the real database is more complex than a simple spreadsheet, but the spreadsheet is a better way for us to understand. And then what are the other features of a relational table, right? So like each table we require, they have primary key. And if you have linking to other tables, you should have a foreign key to linking to other tables. And the primary key can be a single column, or you can have a combo primary key, right? Like the sales line item or purchase line item, you can have two columns as a combo primary key. And then the cardinalities. When we link the tables together, how many instances they should match with each other, right? Those are also critical. So make sure you understand those 1 to 1, 1 to many, 0 to 1, many to many. Okay, 4 types of cardinalities. And how you implement these cardinalities in actual database, like in Access. For the many to many, I think I put it here. Yeah, for the many to many relationships, we have to add a junctional table. Right, remember that? We have to add a junctional, like a linking table in between. Yeah, let me use a highlighter. I have to use a junctional table between the two objects if they have a many-to-many relationship. For example, sales order and inventory. Okay, many-to-many. So normally we have a sale item or a sales item table. So the sales order and with inventory, because one sales order can include multiple inventory items. So sales order with one inventory is a row, then sales order with another item is another row. Okay, so that's like so on and so forth. But as a review, I'm not talking about the details, but if you think, oh, I may kind of forget, or oh, I need to refresh my memory, then go back, okay, to read more and pick up those important database. For database knowledge, I hope you can return this, because this is not really only a testing of my course. When you go to any working places and any position or business operational, your knowledge about relational database will enhance your like understanding and your performance, okay, and impress people about your knowledge on this type of ideas. So that's kind of the key. Or then other relational database principles. So you can use the Access to help us review. So when we do the Access projects, so remember, I think we did 2 of them. The first one, we created tables, right? So we created tables and linked them together. And even we didn't really work on data for the first Access project, but you learned how to add new tables into a database by putting the right attributes, like columns, the attributes or the fields, and define the keys and linking them together. Okay, we have that, the sunglass, right? So sunglass database. Then in the second Access project, we focus on learning queries. The SQL, right? I think SQL is kind of one of my favorite. Even it's kind of hard, not a little bit hard in the beginning. It can be confusing sometimes, but it's challenging, but very useful, and I like it a lot because it really teach you, right? So critical thinking and being very careful in putting the code, checking your syntaxes, even like a small space would cause error when you try to run the queries. So it really give you problem solving and critical thinking skills, okay, when try to building different queries, because when the users asking you the queries, they don't have the answer. You don't have an answer sheet to check, right? It's real problems. How I can get the results my manager is asking, or other users are asking me, as because I'm managing these databases. That's something you need to know. Okay, even like I'm not a computer person, but that's kind of your upper skill of your knowledge, or you can handle that. So review the fundamental syntax and the way to write and understand the queries. Okay, the SQL, like the select command. From a command, okay, what's the purpose for each of them? How we can define criteria. We use the where, right, to search by our criteria, like location, right? The state, I want which state, or I want a customer last name, or I want to have a summary statistic, totally sales revenue for the month, average invoice, count of the invoices, and especially how I can do the joint queries using the primary key and the foreign keys, right? In Access, you can connect them, you can use the query wizards, but I still recommend you, understand those join type. We have left join, inner join, right join. I made a process. After we finished the project, I made a short video talk about my comments I posted, or if you want to review, like join the queries, I think a little bit hard in the beginning, but once you get into it, because in real world, join the queries is used more popularly than the single queries. Okay, so and that's kind of the database, but I don't know really why the book puts the enterprise system topic in the end of chapter 6. If for me, I would put it in the beginning of chapter 7 or chapter 8 when we started on the ERP system or the ERP. But anyway, things they show in the book. So I want to be consistent. Okay, so what is the overall purpose and components and functions of the enterprise system, and what is ERP? I will leave you to answer, but ERP is the commercial softwares to help you design and implement your enterprise system. So enterprise system is more like a theoretical concept. Okay, this is like overall, it is like a math problem, but in the real world, how we implement. Okay, like, we have office need, right? So I want a software to solve all of my office data entry, like office software, and then Microsoft is the main products in the market to help me handle my office job, right? So Word or Excel, PPTs. So similar here, enterprise system is my goal, and ERP is the commercial softwares. But in the ERP system is more diversified than the office software market, right? So ERP is more diversified. We have multiple vendors, but SAP is the dominant one, mostly suitable for large, medium-sized companies or businesses. But but SAP these days also try to offer solution for smaller scaled business as well, even for governments and not-for-profit organizations. Okay, they are expanding their clients industries, okay, like profiling. So you have a diversified client basis. And please really cherish, we have the privilege to teach SAP in our school because it's not free, even for academic. Our school paid on annual basis. I asked my daughter, she is like with Trinity, and she's also learning accounting information system, but they are using kind of different tools, and they are using something I don't know, remember the name. And she happened to ask her teacher, okay, why they didn't use SAP, and guess the answer. And their teacher said, because SAP is kind of expensive to use in teaching. So Okay, feel blessed. Okay, we have SAP to learn, to practice. Okay, and I feel very excited and happy to see most of you have a really nice engagement, and that's much better than I thought, because I was really worrying about this asynchronized online setting that may prevent us from taking advantage of using SAP, but is to my much relief. Okay, at this point, I have observed most of you completed the financial module with no problem. And lots of you already in the process of finishing the document and even already completed. Okay, I'm very happy and I'm very proud of you, okay, of this. So let me stop this. Trying to